when you're being triggered by somebody and you're being in that relationship dynamic is happening, is to remind yourself, take a step back. You're going to react as your parents reacted to yourself. So there's an opportunity there to take a step back and say, okay, am I actually reacting from my values here, or am I reacting from maybe a past lesson that's not actually applicable today, right?
Welcome to the Dad Central Show, hosted by Ed Gow Jr. and Drew Solon. We know dads want to see their kids succeed, but they don't always know how to get there. This show gives dads the tools they need to raise confident and successful kids.
What is up, everybody? Ed Gow Jr. here of Dad Central, joined by Mr.
Drew Solon of Dad Central.
What's going on, Drew? What's up? What's up?
Well, the day we're recording this, it is leading into Father's Day. And I've been fielding the question, what do you want to do? What do you want to do for Father's Day? And we had a plan. The weather doesn't look like it's going to cooperate. And so now I actually feel like just chilling out for the day and relaxing at home. So again, I'm always curious, what do dads like to do for Father's Day? So if you're listening to this, I'd love to hear about your Father's Day. How'd it go? Send us an email or a podcast at dadcentral.ca and let us know about your Father's Day. The other thing is I really love this process of connecting with other dads or people who are working in this space and supporting fathers. So it's important that we continue this process. And so I want to just remind you, if you're listening to the show and you find value in it, share it with another dad. Let them know that it's helping you or it's interesting for you. And of course, if you like the content, please, it really helps if you give us a review on iTunes or at least rate the show on Spotify. Love to get that type of feedback so we can continue bringing guests and content that's going to be valuable. So some thoughts for me. How about you, Ed? How are you?
I'm outstanding. As I said, Father's Day is coming up, and as usual, it's that one day of the year for dads. And I was reading an article, I don't know who wrote it, but I guess I don't know what they used to evaluate it, but the number 2 most celebrated day of the year is Mother's Day. And this writer was saying Father's Day is around 27, 28. So I want people just to think about that.
Yeah.
I just want people to just like things that make you go, So we want to move Father's Day up in that popularity, because actually, little insight here, I was at a virtual conference last week, and they were talking about fathers and mental health. Really good subject. And the facilitator put it really cool. He said, what are the 3 first letters in mental? Men. And then he said, what are the first 4 letters in health? Heal.
Okay.
Men heal, fathers heal. So I
Yes.
thought it was very, very, very nice. And one of the other facilitators, one of the speakers said, because we're amplifying father doesn't mean we're lowering mothers. We're amplifying fathers. We're not lowering the role of the partner. And I thought that was good because a lot of times you'll say, oh, well, fathers, you just, you're forgetting about their partners. No. We're amplifying both.
Yeah, well, I think that really aligns with the whole purpose of parents, which is to raise your children. And when you are both supported and you're both showing up at your best, the benefit is obviously for both of you, but ultimately for those children who are experiencing the best of both parents. And so we each have a role. There's unique elements to both mothers and fathers, but they're so critical and so needed for the health of children. And the children are essentially going to grow up and become the adults who are going to run the world. And so it's such a critical piece to have all parents supported to do the very important work. I think it's Andy Stanley who says, every other leadership role you can be replaced, but there's no leadership role like a parent that can ever be replaced in the life of your child. So just tells you how important it is.
Absolutely. And you said the word best, which leads into a great segue. The Dad Central show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man. Drew did say best, because when men care for themselves and others, there is a positive impact. So when I heard him say best, I said, great segue. So thank you, Drew, for that segue. I didn't know we were going to put the DM plus C tagline in there, so you set us up very well. So thank you very much, sir.
Happy to be a good teammate.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, you know what? I guess our friend will have to wait for another, because you mentioned about team. And I know Drew is all about leadership. And I had a few weeks ago, so 2 months ago, the opportunity to attend a 4-hour session with a gentleman who used to be the VP of Volvo worldwide. And he talked about leadership and teams. And people say, where are you going with this with Dad? So, well, I'm getting to it. And one of the many great things he said is that it's a very valuable that a leader, and I'm also saying a father, has a good team, because a good team covers a father's blind spots.
Absolutely. So important.
So
that whole partnership piece and parenting as a team, but also having that phrase, it takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
Also Absolutely. Very important.
So since we've got our new friend, we'll never get our new friend. Yes, we're going to get our new friend on. So we have another new friend on the Dad Central show, and Drew's going to do the introduction.
Thank you, Ed. Well, today we're talking with Aaron Sully. He is the founder of Engage Coaching Group. He's also the author of a book called Engage, Connect, Grow, 52 Lessons to Get to the Heart of What Truly Matters. So what truly matters, pretty important, fatherhood. And so Aaron is also a dad to 2 boys. And so Aaron, welcome to the show. Looking forward to having you and hearing all about the work that you're doing, but also your personal story. So welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me.
Great stuff.
Great to be here.
How's your day going today, Aaron?
Going well. Yeah, having a good day so far.
Good stuff. Yeah. Drew, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, well, Aaron, our pattern in the show is we like to get into the backstory, a little bit of the early years and how that led to, Aaron becoming who Aaron Sully is now and the work that you're doing. So if you would, Aaron, just start by telling us a little bit more about life growing up and how that led to maybe where you're at now.
Definitely. Happy to share that with you and the listeners. So I grew up what would look like a middle-class, normal upbringing. My dad was a professional. He was an accountant. And my mom, she was at home with myself and my brother and sister, and typical, raising us very well, and to be respectful and kind and loving to each other and to others. And but there's a component of it that I didn't quite understand when I was younger. I knew a bit about my past, but I didn't really connect to it, because an element of my story that took me some time to really get a better understanding about was my mom actually separated from and eventually divorced my birth dad when I was just recently born. So within a few months of me being born, my mom moved away to my grandparents' house, and so my father, who I call Dad today, is technically my stepfather. He adopted me when I was like 4 years old, and the relationship with my real father never really developed. When I was young, my father to me was my grandfather, and so I had this deep connection to my grandfather, living in their home for my first 2 years of life, and then living quite close to my grandparents, all of my younger years. And so I had this connection that my grandfather was an amazing man. He was just he's so funny. He has a great sense of humor. He wanted to be Irish, so he claimed he was Irish. He would sign the census forms that he was Irish, even though he wasn't. But he just had this desire that he wanted to be Irish. He just loved that. But he was a radio broadcaster. He started a radio station with his business partners up in northern British Columbia, and I just looked up to him. And he taught me a lot about just being myself, and we would practice being radio broadcasters and recording our voices and all these types of fun things, and listening to radio shows, and then. That connection with him it truly was almost like father-like, even though I had, Roger, who I call my dad today. He was the typical dad as far as he was a really good provider. And that bond was different. With him, it was more around sports. So he actually was one of the unique dads that I had growing up in the circle of dads, my friends that actually would play basketball with me and my buddies. He'd play. We'd play ice hockey in my backyard, and he'd be out there playing. My friends sometimes would be kind of joking with me that what's my dad playing with us, but it was pretty cool that my dad's out there playing and the other dads aren't, right? And so I had this connection with my grandfather, and then a different kind of connection with my with who I called my dad, and then saw my birth dad when I was about around 10 years old. And I never really remembered him. I apparently had seen him a number of times when I was little. And he showed up close to my birthday. And my birthday is actually on Christmas Day. So he came a few days before Christmas. And he had a gift for me. And it was a very odd kind of conversation because my mom was close to the room, but she was on the outskirts and kind of in the kitchen. But I could tell she was not happy. Like she was quite not impressed with this fellow. And I just was enamored with him. I was learning about him and meeting him at 10 years old and thinking that this would be like a new kind of father figure for me. And the gift he gave me, like we kind of had this rule that you didn't open your Christmas presents till Christmas, but I got to open his early. And it was like a Pac-Man arcade game back in the 80s, little handheld game. So it was like the best present ever. So I was just enamored in this fellow. And, looked forward to connecting with him more. And, he asked for my picture, one of my school pictures and that, and then never heard from him again. And was kind of had this, all through high school and that. It was always in the back of my mind is, okay, I have this real dad, but my mom seems very angry with him. So there's just something going on there. And there was no real connection happening. And so through high school, I had a lot of anxiety, and I did actually as well lose my grandfather about at 10 years old as well. And so that was extremely hard. I was suffering and nobody else seemed to be, as far as my siblings or my cousins, that because I had this different bond with him, right? So I was, the kids weren't allowed to go to the funeral. And so here I am losing someone that I absolutely care about and left to kind of mourn on my own and not really understand about what life's going to be like. And after losing him, I struggled in school. I struggled with connecting with my friends, and in high school I had all this anxiety and looking back, it had something to do with that loss in some ways, but also just part of who I was. I was very shy and had a difficult with my confidence and self-esteem, a lot of difficulty there. And so that really impacted me in my adult years as I dealt with depression and anxiety on and off, and never really knowing how to deal with it and really understand who I am as a guy, as a man. I felt different. I felt more connected to my mom. I didn't feel as masculine, as the typical guys I hung out with that were really like jocks and, wanting to, be competitive and all that. I still competed in sports, but I struggled with the, aspects of it because I just mentally just felt different and I cared more about things that other guys didn't seem to care about. Right. I was more feeling based. So I felt like what's wrong with me? There's got to be something wrong with me. And that kind of led to my, in 2011, I was in one of the deepest, darkest depressions of my life, where I was going through my separation of my first marriage. I had a 2-year-old at the time. My oldest son was 2. And I was in the basement of the townhouse that we owned, contemplating what's wrong with me here? Like keep getting depressed. I'm not stepping up as a man here, as a father. Why do I keep struggling with just being like all the other guys, which I thought, right? I'm just assuming that I am not strong enough. I'm not being a good husband. And in that basement, I had this aha moment where I needed to stop asking myself, why is this happening? And I needed to ask a different question. I needed to ask, what is this for? Like, there's got to be a reason for this. And as I started to ask that question and look more at what the purpose of what I was going through was, and look deeper, is when I started to really understand a bit more about, who I wanted to be, my values, and that all these things I was believing that was was wrong or something was wrong with me was actually not true. It's just part of the kind of guy that I am, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Aaron, thanks so much for sharing. There's a lot involved just in that short story that you shared. But that last part, the word that came to mind for me was, searching for identity. What are your thoughts on that as I share that?
Yeah, it took me a long time to figure out what that actually meant. A lot of self-help books that I read over the years and courses I took were, talking about, who are you? What is your identity? And to me, it's a journey. It's not necessarily like some people seem to know who they are and they can embrace it, but if you don't, it's okay. For me, it took me a bit of time to figure that out, and it can evolve over time. Who you are when you're 20 can be completely different to who you are when you're 30, right? And there's an evolution there. And I realized that it's not a matter of getting too wrapped up into having this one identity, because that identity changes when you get married, when you get a career, when you become a father. Like, the identity kind of evolves and changes, and it's not one definition, and you get to decide ultimately, who you want to be.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Aaron, and thank again for sharing some of that journey. Can you pin down when you made that turn?
A big point was when that divorce happened, that separation and divorce kind of came to a head there. It was kind of a big focal point in my life, because I didn't talk a lot about my depression for many years, because it felt like it was, mental health it's so great now that everybody's talking about it, because back in the 90s and that, when I was going through it, you didn't tell people you were seeing a psychologist. You didn't tell people you were in therapy. Something was wrong with you if you were having to talk to somebody. And during going through the divorce, I started to tell people what I was going through, right? And I started to let them know that I am getting help, I am struggling, and that was a big turning point for me, because I realized, okay, I need help with this. I've been trying to do it on my own with counselors and therapists, somewhat in secrecy, and now I need to actually let others know what I'm going through, and that started to help turn things for me. Because once I put it out there that this is going on for me, it just, I didn't experience the backlash that I thought I was going to experience by telling people this. They actually embraced me, and from a sense of, okay, what help do you need? We're here for you. I didn't feel as alone as I thought I was going to be. Yeah.
I think that's a really important point. There's so much fear or stigma, or essentially thinking that it's going to be much more disastrous than it really is. And so that really, I think, keeps people, locked or stuck and unable to take the courageous step, because that's really what it is. It's the ability to courageously step out and say, hey, here's what's going on for me. And I need some help. I could really, use some support in this process. And I think that's a really important step. Yes, it's great that people are now talking about it more, but there's still individually a lot of, I think, fear that holds people back. And hopefully, the more it's talked about and it's viewed as it's actually courage and wisdom to know when you need some support and can reach out and find the supports, I think the better we'll all be. So yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that, Aaron.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Ed, did you want to hop in? And I feel like there's some thoughts there.
Yeah, definitely some more talking points I want to see if, Aaron, you're open enough to address. How did the challenge of depression impact your early years of fatherhood?
Yeah, I guess it impacted my ability to just, because what I found when I was going through depression, like every simple thing seemed like a big challenge, right? Even just getting up in the morning, like I was still getting up and going to work. Like it wasn't impacting me where I wasn't completely immobilized and couldn't do anything, but it still felt inside like I was running on, everything was slow motion, just trying to get ready in the morning and get out the door to get to work. Like I kind of put on a bit of a front and made it work, even though what was going on inside was struggling. So it impacted my ability to have, my weekends. I was just exhausted, so I didn't feel like I had the energy to do stuff with my son, especially when he was younger. There, like the things I wanted to do, and go to parks and do things. Like I'd have moments where I would do that, but then I'd have moments where like I just want to just hang out at home and not go anywhere. I wasn't, I'd still be doing stuff with him and interacting in that, but it would be like more safer things that I didn't have to be out in public, because I was, inside of me, I was worried about what other people would think of me, and all these voices in my head that aren't really true, and these thoughts are not true. But I would just take the safe route versus, oh, let's go try this new activity out that we've never tried before, that I've always wanted to do with you, but I was stuck as to, okay, how am I going to make that happen?
Wow. Definitely courageous. I want to bless you for fighting the fight, because I know, especially, raising a young son and going through a divorce, that's like a left right that a lot of people can't handle.
Yeah. I want to echo Ed's comments there. And it seems that you have climbed, out of that and are now helping others, right? You have created a coaching group, engaged coaching group. You've been working with men. You've got, so why don't you tell us, maybe what's the one or two key things you would say to a person who is maybe in the place that you might have been? And then maybe can you talk? So why don't we start there, and then we'll pick up from that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to know that there's help available. Like even when it feels like you're all alone in the struggle, that there is the ability to get help, whether it's through your work benefits, whether it's through some type of other resource, even just reading a book, journaling your thoughts. There's easy ways to get help, and get support. The other thing that the men that I work with, the one thing I start to work with them on is their feelings and actually embracing their feelings. The therapist that I saw many therapists over the years, psychologists and then registered therapists and other practitioners. And it was when I was going through my divorce, there was one that I connected with. It was really the right one for me. It took some time, and so I encourage people to just know that if the therapist or anybody, life coach or whoever you're talking to, if it's not working, it may not be the right fit. But this particular one, I came to her and I said, I've got depression that I've been dealing with for years. It just comes and goes. I'm struggling with dealing with it. And she said, well, you know what depression is? And I said, yeah, it's this dark cloud that hangs over me that makes it feel like everything's impossible and that I can't move forward. And she's like, yeah, that's definitely a good definition for it. But the other thing is that depression can also be looked as anger turned inward. And the light bulbs went off for me when she said that, because I had no relationship to anger at all. I stuffed it. I was taught as a kid that you're not allowed to be angry, right? If you're angry, you're bad. It's not a good thing to be angry. And so I ended up working with this therapist and doing other work around anger and changing my relationship to it, and knowing that it's okay to be angry. When you're angry, it's not okay to go start beating people up and using it aggressively, but it's okay to feel it. It's okay to release it in a safe way. And on the flip side of anger is actually passion. So you want to connect to anger because you're going to be able to connect to what you're passionate about. And so that's one thing that I encourage men to do is to connect with your anger in a healthy way. Find ways to do it in a way that's going to actually get you connected back to what you're passionate about.
Yeah, that's really important. Ed, I see you want to hop in there too. So do you want to go first?
If I could. So I'm looking at a little bit of a journey here. You had a test. You made it your testimony. When did the aha moment say, you know what? I can help other fathers and men that are going through this? Yeah,
I actually, when I was going through that separation that eventually led to a divorce, my first marriage there, I ended up enrolling in a personal growth program that really was for me. It was just to focus on, I got to figure myself out here. And what I realized, the first year was all about yourself, and then the second year was about helping others, and then the third year was leadership. So it was a 3-year program. I just signed up for year 1, but when I got into year 2, and they started to teach around how to help other people, and there was maybe myself and 2 other men in the group. It was all women primarily. I started to realize, just from me sharing my story and hearing the story of the other men in the room, and then what the women were saying. The women were saying, more men need you guys out there, right? What you've gone through, you can teach that to our partners, to our brothers, and that just made me start to look at, okay, like, yes, can I help other men that have gone through similar journeys I have, and so that led me to completing that program to be able to do the coaching that I do, and realizing that as I went through that, I just encountered more and more men that were struggling and needing help, and I'm there's a need here, and you see it in the statistics, around mental health in men. It's impacting everybody, but men are impacted in other ways than women, and I think a lot of it can also be tied to their purpose. And if they've lost their way as far as their purpose and who they are, that impacts how they step forward, and they get stuck along the way.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Ed. Your point before about emotions, I think, is really crucial. And I'm not sure if you have heard of Jason Wilson. He's an author. He works with youth in the city of Detroit, inner city of Detroit. He has a documentary on ESPN called The Cave of Adullam, and another book actually called Battle Cry. And the whole point of his books and his message is really saving men from emotional incarceration. And he really focuses on the fact that these emotions, if you lock them away, if you keep them stuffed, if you don't actually become aware, process them, and let them out in a healthy way, they'll actually keep you incarcerated. They'll keep you locked up in a prison. And so it sounds like what your point was is exactly the same. And so I think I don't want to leave that point without putting a little bit of an emphasis there, that dads, men, people, actually anyone in particular, if they're not able to healthily address or work through their emotions that are on the inside, it creates potentially disastrous effects. And I think personally, when you say this mental health crisis, it's not mental health, it's emotions.
Yeah.
It's everyone's ability to accept, become aware of, accept, and then healthily process those emotions and communicate them in a healthy, respectful way to others, that breaks down all the barriers, that removes a lot of the junk that we all carry, and it keeps us stuck. So I just wanted to put that out there, but also ask your thoughts on that.
It's so important because there's such a focus on IQ, and there needs to be in the school system, there needs to be that, and it's starting to happen more and more on the EQ, the emotional intelligence side, the emotional side of things, right? Is making sure that the emotions are part of that. Not just are you intellectually intelligent, but bring the emotions are actually what are going to help move you forward. Because you can be absolutely brilliant, but then emotionally not be able to connect with yourself, with other people. And we all need human connection to be able to live in a harmonious life, right?
Yeah.
And so the more that we can, yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. Yeah.
Well, so what did that look like for you then, as you got to a better place with your emotions? I mean, what practically, what would that look like for somebody if they're saying, well, I'm like, you realized your anger and then you were okay with it? Well, like, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I actually, to be completely transparent, I started feeling sadness more, right? Because anger can be viewed as a surface emotion. And what's happening is that anger, once you actually let it out in a safe way, another emotion is going to show up. And for me,
what would be a safe way to let anger out?
A safe way is to scream into a pillow, or use a pool noodle against your bed, right? That's one of the things that we used to do. I
find exercise for me really
exercise
helps
can do it too. Yeah,
get that anger out.
Yeah, Definitely. There's ways, yeah, a lot of the exercises I learned were actually releasing the anger in a kind of a yelling way, but you want to do it in a way that's you're not going to scare other people.
Mm.
But yeah, hitting a punching bag.
I'm going to throw one more out there. Breathing, actually.
Yeah, breathing too.
Breathing can actually help too. I know you're like, what? Well, I think breathing can actually help because it helps regulate that autonomic nervous system.
Yeah, if you're in a work environment, definitely go to breathing first, and then when you get home, you can hit your punching bag or
there's something very powerful about the physical aspect of releasing, for sure.
There definitely. But on the other, once that anger's out, you want to actually allow any feeling to show up, not just the anger. But for me, it was actually the sadness that showed up because I hadn't properly grieved the death of my grandfather. All these years, I was missing him. And I didn't understand why he had left. And so there was a lot of grieving that needed to happen for me to get to a place where I was okay. I felt better about things. And over time, just by the thoughts I was having about, what are people going to think if I do this? Or like all these anxious thoughts just seemed to go away because I let the emotions just get released because I started approaching things differently. I became more open to, okay, this is a bit of a stress that's showing up. I'm going to look at this differently now. This isn't about me. Certain things are not in my control here, right? And be able to have the better mental space because that emotion's been expressed now. You have more capacity to look at things a lot clearer and from a different perspective.
Are you a dad who feels like you're juggling a million things at once? Balancing work, family, and personal goals can be overwhelming. But what if there was a solution? That's why we created our new fatherhood community called Dad Mentor. For over 20 years, Dad Central has built practical tools to help dads. We understand the challenges you face and provide the support you need to thrive. The biggest complaint we hear from dads is there's no dedicated support for their specific needs. But not anymore. Our new community, called Dad Mentor, is here to transform your fatherhood experience. Imagine feeling in control, staying calm and patient when your children misbehave. Picture yourself connected to your children, guiding them with confidence and watching them succeed. When you join Dad Mentor, you'll have access to a community of like-minded dads committed to their dad journey, just like you. You'll also get the Dad's Roadmap. This is a step-by-step plan to help you go from unsure to unstoppable as a dad. Monthly masterclasses and Q&A sessions. You'll get answers and know exactly what to do straight from experts. Monthly group meetups that connect dads over common topics. A dad's resource library. Curated webinars, podcasts, or guides built by Dad Central to help you grow as a parent. And finally, you'll also get exclusive members-only offers and events. Now, many dads do try to do this fatherhood thing alone, only to find themselves trapped in frustration and strained relationships. Then they may turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like drugs, alcohol, or other distractions, leaving their family and their own well-being at risk. We don't want you to reach that point of regret. Take steps to invest in you and your family today. Join Dad Mentor and go from stressed, tired, and overwhelmed to confident, calm, and connected. Join us today by going to dadcentral.ca/dads. Ed, over to you. Sorry, I wanted to jump on that one.
No problem. There's a number of things going on in my alleged mind here that I would say that for a number of men, anger is the easiest emotion for them to have. And another thing I want to ask too is it's a fascinating conversation for me because where do many men even get taught about emotions? Fathers and men, we don't get taught this is good. A lot of times we're just jump off a cliff and grow your wings on the way down, so to speak. So I just like to get some more perspective from you, from the number of men that you've helped, about how many of them have a knowledge about their emotional quotient.
Yeah, the majority. It's interesting because the men that I've been helping a very similar path to myself. They stuff their anger, and they used addiction to hide it. Right. For me, I was never addicted to alcohol or drugs or anything, but the addictions that showed up for me would be, I actually would, become obsessed in a video game or, some type of, I'd just be binge watching shows. Like I'd find something that would, keep my mind occupied versus actually the anxiety or the what was actually going on. So a lot of the men, what ends up happening is they just learn from and watching their own dads and the other father figures in their life, right? So there's a pattern that you may not actually have somebody in front of you saying this is how you deal with anger, but you see it as a kid. You see how your father handles anger, how your mother handles anger, how other men in your family handle anger, and that's what you start to. It starts to imprint in you as, okay, this is how we're supposed to deal with anger. And so there is lessons that are being taught, and they may not necessarily be direct. It could be indirect.
Yeah, and I want to jump in here if I can, Ed, and say this is really important. And this skill of learning about your own emotions and then being able to accept those emotions, but then communicate those emotions in a healthy way. The only way that children are going to learn it is if they see it modeled. And the only way for us to model it is to start the process ourselves as dads. And so, there's a great book. I might have referenced this on the show before. It's by Dr. Josh and Christy Staub, and it's called What Am I Feeling? It's a children's book, but it walks through this story of Sam, and he has he's feeling flipping his tummy. His dad says, well, Sam, it sounds like you're afraid. And so he's helping his son recognize the feeling that's coming up. And then they have a simple message that, a feeling is just a feeling. It's not in charge of you. But also have a message of when you name your feelings, it loses its power over you and you know what to do with it. And so some very simple messages that are teaching children about this in the context of a story, but as a parent, you're also learning it too. Then the other step I think that's really important I want to show is learning to use words like I feel, and then actually put an actual feeling word. So we got a feelings chart in our house, sad, scared, embarrassed, guilty, happy, so that kids can understand. And we actually have to model that. And so, man, I feel really sad about this situation, or I feel really angry about this situation, and being able to communicate in that healthy way and help kids with naming their feelings too. Anyways, that's really important. And I want to just talk about, these are some practical things you dads can do, getting these books, getting these resources, and just starting to model it yourself, which is your point. So very good.
I love the feelings chart. I love that. Having it right there for your kids too. That's awesome.
Yeah. Ed, back to you. I keep jumping in my interjections, but
no problem. I want to take a look at something interesting in regards to fathers, especially with fathers, the different groups of relationships that they've got to manage emotions. So if they have a partner, that's one set of emotions they got to regulate. If they have kids, that's another set of emotions they've got to regulate. And one that a lot of times goes missing is their relationships with other men.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to expand on any of that I've just shared?
Yeah, what I learned from the teachings that I was taught around relationships is that a lot of people that are in our life are really a reflection of a past relationship. So your partner is going to have elements of your parents and the behaviors in them, right? So if you're being triggered by your partner, or even somebody at work, or other men that you hang out with, a lot of it could be tied to your beliefs, your values around that you were taught as a kid, and our partners and our kids actually trigger us the most because we're in that family type of dynamic, which is how we grew up, right? So a key aspect of that is to remember that just when you're being triggered by somebody and you're being in that relationship dynamic is happening, is to remind yourself, take a step back and reflect on who are you actually seeing across from you. Are you seeing your father in front of you? Are you seeing your mother in front of you? Because if you are, you're going to react in a certain way that may not help things, right? and your kids even, right? Your kids maybe not listening and you want them to do something, and you could almost be seeing yourself in that moment as well. And you're going to react as your parents reacted to yourself. So there's an opportunity there to take a step back and say, okay, am I actually reacting from my values here, or am I reacting from maybe a past lesson that's not actually applicable today, right? That that I want to change the patterns, because the changing the pattern, actually the first step is, when I talk about in my book, that engage aspect is kind of the awareness piece. I'm going to engage in being aware of what's happening in my world outside of me. So being able to make sure that my reaction is actually based on who I want to be versus connecting to what my parents maybe are taught me, that I actually don't believe that lesson anymore. It's not helpful.
Yeah, really important. And
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful to add on that when you see those reactions happening in you, that it's a sign.
Yeah.
It's not, so it's a sign, and it's there for a reason. So it's, to your point, that's when you have to take the pause and take some time to reflect and figure out what is going on. Is it from my values, beliefs, or is it from something else that I actually don't want and doesn't apply to this situation? Very important.
That's really good observations that we're hearing here today. Let me ask also too, with your coaching practice, how much has it changed, whether it's clients or context, post-pandemic?
It's been more virtual, obviously. So I was seeing people more in person, but now because everybody's, become accustomed to virtual appointments, I actually see all my clients either, via Zoom or Meetup and Google or over the phone. So just kind of giving people the ability to not have to come to an office space. And then there's anxiety that showed up that during COVID that people are dealing with. Their career may be impacted, where they're being asked to come back to work and they actually don't want to. They want to be more in a so they're actually revisiting different areas of things they want to work on with me, because life is different. They want to spend more times with their kids. They're realizing this is important. I really like that aspect, that I was able to see my kids a lot more and watch them grow up versus having to commute to work every day. And so that becomes a bit more of the conversation of how can I change my career, whether it's maybe with the same organization, or do I have to start looking at the culture of the organization I want to be with, where they actually are acceptive of dads being closer to home and being with their kids more.
Are you seeing, with those clients that you're helping, are you seeing corporate culture adjust more to the needs and wants of dads?
It depends. It really depends on the leadership team, to be honest. Some are, and some are a bit. They're not. They're hesitant. There's still belief in some organizations that if you're not, at your desk in the office, you're not producing. Which that is going to that mindset is changing in the world of work here. What's going to be coming is more research on working 4 days a week, and giving people more flexibility. Like that type of research and proof of that it works is coming to more industries, and so these organizations have to start to adapt. And these men are, they're just going to leave eventually if the organization doesn't embrace what their people are asking for. Right?
True. Go ahead.
Thanks. Well, I want to shift gears and focus on what you're seeing in your own fatherhood journey as you've grown yourself. So maybe can you talk to us about Aaron the dad, and how you're showing up today and the difference it's making in your relationships with your sons?
Yeah, so it's a unique relationship, and where my youngest is with me full time. I'm remarried, and I have a 6-year-old son. My oldest is 13, and so co-parenting with him, and so he's with me about 3 to 4 days a week, depending on the week. And so and he's also 13, so he has friends now. And, dad isn't as fun to be around as I used to be. So it's been challenging on trying to balance seeing and being part of both kids' lives, and also the relationship dynamic between the both of my sons is different because they're not seeing each other all the time, right? So when we have vacation time and we go away together, that there's it's great that the boys get more time together and I get to be with them more. But it also is interesting because they're also around each other more, and that can create a bit of a dynamic there because they're not used to being around each other more. But so I'm balancing things as best I can. But the one thing that I probably learned more from my mom in a lot of ways is just how to be there for my kids, and as far as contributing, so doing things around the house. I helping with doing laundry, cooking meals. That's the kind of dad I want to be, as to be able to be part of their, even if it's just some of the day-to-day stuff. There was, back in the 80s, there was a movie called Mr. Mom, and it was about a dad who was at home more, and he actually helped take care of the kids. And I actually looked up to that dad. I thought that was pretty cool, that this dad is not only just bringing in financial security to the home, but he's actually contributing to the day-to-day running of the household, right? And actually being part of that, which I think is important as far as the part of being a father.
Yeah, very important. And most importantly, it's something that comes from your internal drive. You want to be there. You want to contribute. You want to develop the relationship. And certainly the challenge of blending a family or having, a child part of the time versus all the time, which is also my dynamic as well. So I can certainly understand there's challenges there. But I mean, let's say if you were talking or coaching somebody in that scenario, what would your advice be to go through that process with a healthiest relationship possible?
Yeah, I think if there's any guilt coming up around not seeing your child, full time and all the time, like, just to really spend some time looking at that. And is that guilt actually valid? You get to be their dad, whether they're in your home 100% of the time or 50% or 20%. Like, you're still their dad. And really checking in as, are you doing the best you can? Because that's all you can do is the best that you can with what you've got. And if the scheduling arrangements are that you see them on the weekends, like, are you just being the best dad you can on those weekends, or whatever the time frame that you have them? And the beautiful thing about technology is I can still talk to my son when he's not here, right? I can still text him, I can still phone him, and so I can still have a relationship with him even if he's not physically with me.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Aaron. Ed?
No, I think this. Again, I want to bless you because that's a very challenging situation. The dynamics, and I have a feeling sometimes you feel like you're walking on a tightrope.
Yeah, it has its moments for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. No,
yeah.
I'm good, Drew. This has been an incredible conversation, a lot of great dynamics, and incredibly useful information for fathers and those who love them.
Okay. Well, Aaron, thanks so much. Why don't you tell listeners where they can find more about your work and the things that you've got coming up now?
Yeah, I definitely can find me on engagecoachinggroup.com, and also on Facebook. There's an Engage Coaching Group Facebook page. I've just started a virtual men's group. So I've created an affordable way for men that are struggling with their career, whether they're stressed out, they're burnt out, they're wanting to have more time with their family, and that their career is not allowing them to do that, or they just they're in a job, they're making good money, but it's not fulfilling, right? And they're scared to make a change in their career because they're not going to be able to have the financial security that they have been able to provide to their family. So I'm creating this group for men to come and get support from myself, but also other men, around how to have feel fulfilled in their career, be successful, but also have that life balance as well. And you can actually connect through either direct message me on the Facebook group, or there's actually in the contact form on my website, you can reach out specifically about the men's group, and happy to share more information about that.
That's great.
Fantastic. Well, Aaron, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule, and congratulations on what you have done, are doing, and will be doing with men and those who love them. And we want to say thank you for taking time to be on the Dad Central Show. Remember to give yourself grace, and don't just manage your time, manage your energy.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Take care. All right. Great conversation there. Any takeaways, Drew?
Well, maybe it's because it's very relevant for me, but the challenge of separated or co-parenting or blending a family is something that I think could maybe use more airtime and advice from dads and connecting with dads or on how to navigate that. Because I mean, every situation is unique and very nuanced, and some could be extremely more challenging than others. But it seems like there could be more conversations and support for dads in this particular area. And I know it could run the gamut, but maybe something to think about moving forward of how do we work through that again with the focus of helping dads be their best and supporting healthy relationships with the people who are in their life that matter the most to them. So that's kind of my takeaway. Yours?
Yeah, I'll echo what you're saying. I don't think there needs to be, not there's no if, ands, or but. There needs to be more conversation, because there's never enough conversation. I think the emotional end for fathers and men is huge. You mentioned a book. One of the best books I've ever read about this is a book called He Motions by a gentleman named T.D. Jakes. It's about 15, 20 years old. And I referenced during our conversation, like a mantra relationship with his partner, his kids, and with other men. That's what I referenced. And it was one of the best books that really breaks down each relationship, because a father man just has many different relationships, but those he broke down into those 3 significant relationships and how to navigate each one of those. And I think it's a great book, very practical book in regards to helping fathers and men and those who love them. So that's what I added. And I appreciate Aaron's openness about his journey. And I think it's really, I love when people make their testimony, and their testimony is running through them. So it's not just him himself. I'm working through this. I know others that are working through it. How can I serve them and help their fathers and other fathers and families? So I think that's really good stuff. So as we close out, as always, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. We want to hear from you, as Drew said at the front end of the show. We'd love to hear via email, podcast@dadcentral.ca. Also, we have Dad Mentor coming. You want to spend a few quick seconds on that, Drew?
Well, it's very similar to what Aaron was talking about. It's a community for dads to get answers to the difficult questions and the support from like-minded men who have either been down the path that you've been or are traveling that path and can really relate to what you're going through. It's built off of all the resources that we've developed over the years, and we want to bring men together in a forum that uplifts and really encourages them and equips them with the tools to be the best they can be. So, yeah.
Okay. And also, if you want to listen to some of the great, all the great conversations, not some of the great conversations, all the great conversations we've had, go to dadcentral.ca/podcast. And there is piles of free resources for fathers at dadcentral.ca. So as always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to listen or watch our conversations. Remember to give yourselves grace, and don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and we'll see you soon. Take care.